Today, Movie Spotlights will share the story of a sci-fi thriller movie, Chronicles. 3 high school kids unearth an astounding discovery that causes them to possess supernatural powers beyond their comprehension. As they learn to manage and use their superhuman skills, they find they are unable to control their lives, and their darker emotional side takes over. Andrew, a high school student in Seattle, videotapes his life with a camera he recently purchased. As he prepares for school in his room, his alcoholic father, Richard, bangs on his door, demanding he open it. But Andrew refuses due to his current state of drunkenness, causing him to give up and storm off. At home, his mother is dying of cancer. Andrew's cousin, Matt, drives him to school because Andrew does not have a driver's license. Matt questions Andrew's filming, but accepts it awkwardly when Andrew says it's just something he does now. Although Matt is Andrew's closest friend, he avoids him at school by having Andrew go in first, while he sits and waits in his car before going in himself. Andrew is revealed to be an unpopular student who is constantly bullied and harassed by a student named Wayne. On the way home, Matt invites Andrew to a party tonight. He's going to Andrew is hesitant, but Matt insists because this is Andrew's last chance to do something for himself as a senior. Andrew says he'll think about it. Matt suggests that Andrew leave the camera behind because it may alienate people, but Andrew insists. An intoxicated Richard comes into Andrew's room and tosses him off his desk, telling him to open his bedroom door when he asks him to. After that, Andrew accepts Matt's invitation to party that night. At the party, Matt pushes Andrew away from him to get him to socialize. Casey, who is also shooting the party, notices Andrew's work. Matt walks up and tries to make a move on her, but fails. During the party, a drunken guest criticizes Andrew's video, and Andrew leaves feeling rejected. Andrew follows Steve outside, the school's popular star quarterback, to capture something weird they found in the surrounding woods. A hole in the earth that makes a loud and strange noise. They drop into the hole and find a big blue shining crystalline object which turns red. The group has nosebleeds and agony. The camera dies. A few weeks later, Andrew films himself, Matt, and Steve demonstrating the new telekinetic powers they have developed, moving items with their minds, but they experience nosebleeds when they push themselves too far. When they return to the hole, it has collapsed, and the sheriff's department has sealed it for safety. While driving, Steve questions Andrew's filming habits, claiming it builds a wall around him. Andrew still wants to. Andrew tells Steve about his ailing mother and alcoholic father. Richard is heard yelling loudly on the phone later that night in Andrew's room, showing his financial struggles to keep his mother well. Matt hypothesizes their powers are like muscles, getting stronger with practice. To scare youths in a store, the 3 lads start levitating toys towards them and moving automobiles in the parking lot, confusing people when they return. But things go too far when Andrew flings a snarling trucker into a river. Steve pulls the man from the river, and Matt calls the cops to get him medical attention, but they are startled and angered that Andrew would go so far. Andrew is baffled by their rage. Matt reminds him he hospitalized someone. As a result, Matt sets 3 ground rules: never use their powers against living beings, never use them in public, and never use them in anger. Despite Andrew's protests, Matt thinks it's what they need now. They're stronger, and Steve concurs. Steve invites Andrew and Matt to lunch the next day. Matt emphasizes that while he isn't furious with Andrew, he feels they should think before acting now that they are stronger. They don't see Steve right away until he appears floating in the sky, having learned to fly. Andrew is the first to get the hang of it, but Matt struggles to stay up. While flying to throw a football, a passing jet knocks Steve down, and Andrew saves his life. Andrew expresses interest in visiting Tibet due to its tranquil nature. Steve and Matt agree. Matt goes to Casey's house and attempts to make a move on her by claiming he's not the nerd he used to be. Meanwhile, Steve and Andrew are on top of the Seattle Needle. discussing their futures and how Andrew and Matt were good friends before Matt started ignoring them. Steve urges Andrew to enter the school talent contest. Andrew's mother praises his buddies before he leaves, while his alcoholic father questions how Andrew gets to school without Matt. He informs Andrew he's got him. Andrews delight his classmates by doing magic tricks, juggling, and tightrope walking during their talent presentation. Andrew, Matt, and Steve throw a home party that night, with Andrew as the star. Andrew and Monica walk upstairs to hook up after drinking with them. Casey is also at the party, and she encourages Matt to go somewhere else with her. Meanwhile, Steve approaches Andrew to congratulate him on his accomplishment, but Monica yells, feeling disrespected, and storms out of the room. He enters to see Andrew humiliated. Steve tries to reassure him. Things like this will happen and aren't a cause for concern, but Andrew pushes him away. Andrew grows reclusive and resentful. Andrew's father discovers his pricey camera and berates him for keeping it hidden while he's struggling financially, and he falsely accuses Andrew of squandering his money, claiming Matt and Steve are not his friends. Andrew retorts, calling him a moron. Richard becomes enraged and attacks Andrew, who uses his strength to overcome him, pushing him against the wall and stating he can crush him if he wants to. His rage causes Steve and Matt nosebleeds and discomfort. Steve is pulled to Andrew, who is floating in the center of a storm. It was the nosebleed that pulled Andrew to him. He discovers Andrew's black eye and suspects it was his father. Andrew begs him to quit pretending that he cares, knowing Steve was never his friend. Steve assures Andrew that he's always been there for him and Matt, but Andrew becomes enraged and tells Steve to leave him alone until Steve is killed by lightning. Matt confronts Andrew about Steve's death during his funeral. He was killed by lightning, yet no lightning strikes were recorded in the press, and his body was recovered in the field where Steve had no reason to go. Andrew refuses to turn off the camera, ordering Matt to back off. Matt doesn't trust him. When he denies knowledge or blame, Andrew secretly begs pardon at Steve's grave, feeling his superhuman powers are taking over and that he misses him. Andrew drifts apart from Matt and is alone at school. Wayne bullies him again, so he uses his abilities to rip teeth from his mouth. Andrew rationalizes that he should not feel guilty for utilizing his power to harm others weaker than himself. Andrew rushes to get his mother's medication as her condition worsens. Before leaving, Matt confronts Andrew about the school incident with Wayne. Angry, Andrew tries to ignore Matt, but he is aggressively reminded of their rules. Andrew has enough of Matt and urges him to get out of his life. Andrew discovers his mother's medicine is too expensive, so he resorts to stealing money for her medicine. He robs a gas station and accidentally causes an explosion, putting him in the hospital and under police investigation. Andrew's father informs him that his mother has died and accuses him of driving him out of the home to seek him when his mother needed him most. Andrew wakes up, grabs his father's hand, and blasts down the outside wall of the hospital room, believing he can hear him. Matt gets a nosebleed while at a family birthday celebration and realizes Andrew is in trouble. He sees the news of the hospital explosion on TV. Matt and Casey arrive at the hospital to discover Andrew dangling his father by his ankle outside a tall building. Andrew blames his father for driving him crazy, only to be saved by Matt. Andrew then uses his telekinesis powers to hoist Matt's car, which nearly murders Casey before Matt saves her. Matt meets Andrew near the Space Needle, assuring him it's not too late to change things and start over. Andrew refuses and blames Matt for leaving him. Matt recognizes he has issues but promises to make amends if Andrew stops attacking. Andrew attacks Matt and the two battle throughout the city, crashing through buildings and hurling cars, while Matt attempts to reason with Andrew, who was hurt and outraged. He starts destroying structures around him and endangering countless lives. Unable to reach Andrew, Matt rips a spear off a nearby statue and impales him. Matt escapes from the cops. Matt arrives in Tibet with Andrew's camera sometime later. speaking to the camera while addressing Andrew, apologizing for ending his life, but explaining that he had no choice. He tells his cousin that he loves him, and he vows to use his powers for good by discovering what happened to them in the hole. Matt positions the camera to view a Tibetan monastery in the distance and says, "You made it." Before flying away, he says goodbye to Andrew, leaving the camera behind to continue recording the tranquil scene. Check out more Movie Spotlight videos right now.